Hello everyone. Today I wanted to go over some things that indie devs forget to do and some things that would actually help you further your game along that you might not have actually thought about doing before. One of them is actually having someone record their playthrough. So if you've got a game that you've been working on for a while and you've got some mechanics going on, yes, it's awesome to have those mechanics, of course. But if you never actually test the mechanics in someone else's eyes, you might as well be releasing the game blind. Yes, you can play it and make it perfect and run exactly how you were hoping it to work. But just because it's working perfectly for you doesn't mean somebody else is going to run in there and instantly start making it work themselves. The best idea would be to get multiple people to do it, but there's no guarantee that anyone can have access to that. And there's another thing, we in our Discord, if you want to share your project, as long as you do it safely, you can post it inside of our Discord. And people will test it and let you know what they think. Getting it tested and having an outside view of your project can really help further it along, give you ideas, and actually see like how long areas actually take. Because you might have an area that when you play it takes 5 minutes because you know where everything's at. And then if you pretend to go around like you don't know where it's at, you might actually subconsciously choose to avoid that area. So like if I had a corridor going forward and I had an area in the back right corner where I knew that item was, I might be inclined to walk through and go open the first door because I'm like, oh, well, the player's going to explore. You can't guarantee that. Not every player is going to explore. Not every player is going to just assume that all the doors unlock. Not all of them are going to explore everywhere. So it's good to get a baseline idea from seeing people play and take it with a grain of salt. So that's just one big thing that can actually help you with your games. A big thing I noticed a lot of developers and games have done, and AAA studios have issues with this as well. And that is using something that is meant to be intense or epic and really cool and having it happen so many times that it becomes cheap. So like even Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask are heavy issues with this. Don't get me wrong, I love both of the games. But with Majora's Mask specifically, when I had to restart the time 2 or 3 times when I was younger, I didn't really want to keep playing the game. I got tired of having to reset. Yeah, you eventually unlock stuff that actually stays when you do it. But if you don't get far enough to realize that that happens, you're inclined to believe like, oh, okay, so I just restart over and over and over again. It seems like a cool concept at first, but it becomes a hindrance to a lot of players. Now, don't get me wrong. In moderation, like how it eventually allows you to save the stuff, that makes it far less painful. Like when you complete a temple. That's really cool that it saves the temple completion, but it sucks that that some people might end up resetting 5 or 6 times and they'll never complete the game because of that. And Ocarina of Time has an issue with this as well, where they have the Master Sword. Don't get me wrong, it's an amazing idea, the fact that you can switch between young and older Link, but it gets tedious when you have to use the Song of Time to go all the way back to the temple and then pick up the sword or put the sword back. And the first time you do it, it's incredible, it's awesome, but then it kind of just becomes an experience. It's kind of just there. Then you do it 5 or 6 times and you're just like, okay, well, it's just part of the game now. It's a cool idea, but now it's just kind of there. And then a different one is kind of cheapening the effect of how bosses are. And that's when you fight a boss and it's built up as this really cool fight and it just becomes a regular enemy later on. Yeah, to a point it shows progression of your character, but it really just feels like they didn't have an idea for more enemies. Because you could fight a lot more enemies and it still give you the idea of progression because those enemies are far stronger than what you fought before. So when you go over and you fight a big lizard, you kill it, and then the next area you go to, that lizard's everywhere. What was the point of fighting it as a boss? To show a little bit of progression? It just kind of cheapens the effect of what that boss was there for in the first place. And then there's one that indies tend to do a lot, especially newer developers. And that's when you start a project and then you decide, okay, this feature would be pretty cool for it. All right, this feature would be pretty cool for it. All right, what about this one? But you've already got your idea laid out, but now you're just tacking on more stuff that you have to take care of. Yes, some of those ideas might be cool, but if you just constantly add new stuff to the game, you're either going to completely extend the time it takes to make that game and you don't actually finish it, or you just keep adding ideas and eventually they stop working together as well as you think they would. I would like to point out a few games that did this specifically, but those games didn't release. That's the big issue. Is it's something that it might be more fun to work on the new idea that you came up with, but if you never finish the ideas and the baseline idea for the game, it all falls apart. It doesn't matter how many ideas you're working on if none of them are solidified and put into a final project. And yeah, it's okay to add a few ideas here and there, but just don't go overboard. It's called scope creeping. And like I said, it's when you come up with an idea and then this one is specifically for like story-based games where your character starts and they have to overcome obstacles and get to the end. Linear games, parallel games, so on. And that is character growth. If you start with a character who's already perfect, nothing's wrong, they're already an incredible fighter, they're great at everything, then it makes the character hard to relate to. If they have no flaws, then relating to that character is just much harder for players in the end. Yeah, it might seem cool and make it easy for you to be like, all right, cool, so now they got all this stuff. But even like simple animation change throughout your game, showing the character being like, okay, I'm not good at fighting yet. I'm working on learning this. It's something that ruins a lot of movies and cinematics when the character starts at the beginning and they're already, I'm this non-morally gray character who's always good at everything and always nice to everybody. If there's no flaws at all, then the character can't exactly grow. They just stay who they are from the beginning all the way to the end. So that's something to look at, especially, like I said, if you're doing a story-based game. One thing that I've noticed a lot of indie games do that are actually pretty decent is either market their game too early or far too late. There are games that I've heard of that release a month after being announced, and that is just, it can work, but it has a much, much higher risk of failing. And then there's also games that are announced 5 or 6 years before they've even got enough to showcase. Don't get me wrong, as long as you keep giving good updates, like real, actual updates, that's fine. But if you release that the game is being worked on and it's got actually nothing in there, and then you eventually run into the thing of, okay, so I gotta do an update every little bit or I've lost all the traction that I've gathered. If you can't keep up with that, don't start marketing yet. Wait until you have enough to actually get started on your marketing and come up with a marketing strategy as well. Because there's a lot of games that will just throw out a trailer, put some money into it, and hope for the best. And then post on social media and just send it to everybody. Yeah, that can work to a point as long as it gets to the right people. But if you don't have the strategy to even do that much, then your game isn't going to go anywhere unless you get very lucky with the word of mouth. Then there's the part of not figuring out what kind of game loop you want your game to have. You could have an incredible idea in mind. You could have extremely good level design. I could work on a level for 5-6 years, but if I don't have the idea of the game loop in mind and I get that level looking real nice, it feels like it runs smoothly, but I don't have the baseline idea down and I don't get the looping fixed up, that level that may actually work perfectly isn't going to loop well because you haven't designed it to work in that loop. Yeah, you've designed it with the idea in mind of like, okay, I want a character, I want to shoot people, and I want to be able to crouch and hide. That might be great, but there are people who don't even have that much, and they just start building a level, they come up with the story beats, but they don't ever storyboard, they just have the story beats, and they just start throwing a level together. So it's a lot harder to get the loop down for the mechanics and everything if you've already started before you even know what mechanics you're putting into the game. And that's where game design documents and all these other different things come in. Storyboarding, to be able to figure out what you want to put in the game, when and where you want to put it in the game. As well as that's what helps you with your progression. If you want a character to unlock a gun like Silent Hill does, you start with that swinging weapon, the little board with nails on it for an extremely long amount of time. That's cool, but once you unlock the gun, it opens up a whole new way the game can play. So not only do they have a new way of playing, you also have a new way of setting up the levels. So when you're in the hotel, or it's an apartment, I think it's an apartment. When you're in the apartments and you first start going around, the corridors are small, one set area that maybe somebody could walk by each other. But then as you get later on, areas start expanding a little bit, enough for you to be able to have like 2 or 3 people in that one hallway. That's by design because they're expecting you to unlock the gun and then you have to go through those areas again. So when you go through that second time with the weapon, the new gun, you've got that range expansion. So that's going to make it feel like a whole new area, and it's like level design progression. And then you can have it to where areas have puzzles that the gun can be used to unlock. The last one is in between. So one thing that is a yes and a no, kind of take this one with a grain of salt, is no character progression. So a lot of times, this is why a lot of people kind of get turned off of games like Sea of Thieves. Yes, it is successful for a lot of people, but there are tons of people who started playing it and then stopped playing it. I kind of stopped playing it for this reason as well. And I know a lot of people who wanted to play it, and then once they heard about it, they kind of just like, okay, I don't really want to get it anymore. And that's when you don't have anything to unlock to actually progress. No reason to actually play the game. So when you start a game, you actually are in there to play it, go forward. If you're playing a story game, you want to see where it goes. And sometimes your gameplay loop doesn't require progression, but at least the storyline is progressing. In games like RPGs, it's great to have story progression that you're in control of, and character progression that you're in control of. So like you're building the character how you want them to build. Skyrim, Dark Souls, a lot of these are examples that you can use for that, especially like I said, mostly RPG games. But in games, like I said, that's like Sea of Thieves, when as soon as you start, you have everything unlocked. Nothing changes no matter what you do. Only thing you could do to really change that is to play, go over to an island, pick up some cannons and stuff like that. But you can't actually change anything but the cosmetics for the game. Yeah, that creates a baseline even playing field for the whole game, but it also removes that reason for a character to come back and play. Yeah, you can make the game look beautiful and play kind of fun, but that dies real quickly when there's nothing to unlock. There's no real reason to keep playing the game. Of course, you'll have diehard fans who are going to sit there and play it all the time. I'm not denying that. But even with Legend of Zelda, you go around, you get new items, you get new packs, you unlock new areas, you have new items that can unlock new areas, and then you have the songs that allow you to progress and do different things. Wind Waker does a really cool job of that. When you unlock the grappling hook, you'll see all these areas you can access, and you get the grappling hook and you can go through those areas. It's a really cool idea set. And when done properly, it can make a game go from just basic and decent to just being a long-time classic. And then an extra one I'm going to throw in is if you aren't great at art and you don't know how to make something look realistic, don't focus on realistic. There are plenty of ways to put stylized together that will work and look beautiful and end up looking timeless. If you can only make a game that doesn't look realistic, then don't make a game that looks realistic. Focus on those strong suits and follow what you're able to do and hone in on that. Really get it tucked in. Wind Waker, some people say doesn't look amazing. I know plenty of people who say it's by far the most amazing Legend of Zelda game. I know I've brought that up a few times, but even games like Pikmin, the game doesn't look incredible, but even to this day, it still looks good enough to play, and it's still fun. And the art style may not be wild, but the Pikmin are still a household name to a lot of people. So it's things like that. Doom, a lot of people will remember Doom to the point that people will still create games that look like it. So just keep all these things in mind. Like I said, take it all with a grain of salt. Not everything works for every single game, but these are some things that I've noticed that a lot of indie devs do wrong and some things that might just help you on your way. I hope you all learned a lot from this video. I know it was a little different than what I normally make, but please consider hitting like if you did enjoy it. And if you want to see more like this, please consider subscribing. And other than that, I hope you all have a good night, and I hope you have good luck with your game development.